very specific things a person will do to you to betray you, even if they never lie to you. Withholding important information, because technically they didn't lie. If you're neglecting to tell me something that has to do with my success or my safety, you don't have my best interest. Being complicit when other people are harming you. Just because a person is not directly attacking you or saying anything to you does not mean that they are not a part of the problem. Entertaining gossip, because maybe they're not the ones talking badly about you, but if other people think that they can infiltrate our relationship, other people think that they can talk badly about me in front of you, that's betrayal. Getting close to you and using the trust that they've developed to somehow control you or get something from you later. They say that they're there for you or that they're your friend or whatever, but for some reason they never actually show up for you when it matters the most. Clapping and cheering for you in public to keep up appearances, but in private it's cricket. There's no consistency.
If you're neurodivergent, did you know that your executive functioning capacity isn't purely biological? Let's talk about it. I'm Dr. Beth, I'm autistic, I have a PhD specializing in neurodiversity as a sociologist. A lot of people tend to assume that your executive functioning capacity is kind of predetermined at birth. It's either something you are born with a lot of and you're really good at it, or it's something you're only born with a little bit of and maybe you're not so good. Here are 3 non-biological causes that could impact your executive functioning. And I want you to let me know how many of these impact you in the comments. 1, masking and camouflaging. This is a huge executive functioning load. I cannot overemphasize this enough. You're monitoring eye contact, tone of voice, facial expressions, body language. You're constantly manually having to calculate what their response indicates they're thinking and feeling, how you're supposed to respond to that in neurotypical terms. That takes a lot of thinking and planning. 2, you need to plan for things that neurotypical enabled people don't need to plan for. For example, if you know you get overstimulated, you need to remember your headphones, your sunglasses. It's not just that you're not good at thinking and planning ahead, it's that you're having a much larger load. You need to think and plan ahead about more things than your neurotypical peers. And 3, chances are you have backup plan after backup plan after backup plan for when things go wrong. I don't know about you, but if I have to plan a day where I go into the city and I know it's going to be overstimulating, I know I'm going to have to be masking, I need a quick exit plan of how I'm going to get out. This means that when I plan to leave the house, I'm not just planning to leave, I'm also planning multiple different ways I could get home depending on how catastrophic things could get. Nobody likes having meltdowns in public. How many of these relate to you? Let me know in the comments and follow for more.
Filipinos have recently taken to the streets in protest of corruption in their government. They've also taken to social media to name and shame Nepo babies who flaunt their wealth and luxurious lifestyles, allegedly at the cost of taxpayers' dollars. But what happened? From July 2022 to May 2025, the Philippines government allocated 545.6 billion pesos to 9,855 flood control and management projects. In particular, 15 contractors cornered 1 in 5 of flood control projects, bagging 20% of the total budget. That's about 2.46 billion Singapore dollars. In July 2025, the Philippines faced heavy rainfall and tropical storms, resulting in the displacement of over 300,000 people, damage of 3,000 homes, damage and losses of infrastructure and agriculture, and at least 26 deaths. After inspection, it was revealed that a number of flood control projects were not built or had very little work done despite being declared completed by contractors. Following the revelation, Filipinos began scrutinizing businessmen and politicians linked to them, forming a Reddit lifestyle check PH. A post depicting a luxurious house tour featuring a pool and entertainment room allegedly belonged to Henry Alcantara, an official with the Department of Public Works and Highways. Alcantara admitted to certifying ghost projects without confirming whether they were completed. In a Senate hearing, contractor Sara Diskaya admitted to owning 28 luxury cars. The children of these businessmen were not spared. Claudine Koh, daughter of lawmaker and co-founder of High Tone Christopher Koh, received heavy backlash for her many social media posts showcasing her expensive lifestyle and many connections to other contractors and government officials. High Tone was noted by the government to have allegedly won problematic multi-million-dollar contracts with DPWH. Claudine's uncle Elizadi Koh is the CEO of SunWest Group. Her father and uncle have since sold their shares in the companies. Similarly, Jamie Cruz, daughter of Noel Tel Cruz, who owns Stowe Crystal Construction and Trading Inc., has been targeted online during the controversy. Protests have since erupted outside DPWH, with angry citizens demanding accountability for the misuse of funds. President Marcos announced that an independent commission to investigate flood control anomalies will be formed. He also launched a website for citizens to report flood control projects in their area. The Philippine Senate is currently investigating contractors, with Senate President Vicente Tito Soto vowing to fight corruption. For more updates on this matter, follow us here at Mothership.
Here is everything we have learned from Nepal on how to throw a successful revolution. How to correctly overthrow your government in 3 days. Step 1. Identify corruption. Drag your leaders out of their buildings. Step 2. Bring snacks for fellow protesters and the only tourist who gets caught up in the action. Step 3. Burn sage in buildings once they have been safely emptied of corrupt leaders. Day 2, Step 4. Clean up after yourself. Day 3, Step 5. Elect your first ever female leader. Step 6. Return to life as normal because you have successfully held a revolution and replaced corruption with decent human beings.
In just 24 hours, Nepal's Gen Z toppled a prime minister, triggered an unprecedented army intervention, and changed the course of their country's history.
Do you want me to show you how desperate ICE is becoming? We've all heard about the age cap being gone. Anybody can now be an ICE officer as long as you're 21 years or older. But check this video out.
Open the window. I'm gonna bust the window. Okay? I'm gonna bust. Open the door. I'm gonna bust the window. Fine. Get out of my face.
I'm not in your face. You got the wrong one. I'm not the one to be scared with.
Open
You
the
heard?
window.
That gun and that badge not gonna
Okay,
help
I'm gonna
you.
bust the window.
No, you're
I'm gonna
not.
bust the window. I'm gonna bust the window. Open the door. Open the door.
See why you can't
Open
be
the
here?
door.
Cool as hell. You over here at somebody in
Open
your
the
face.
door. Open.
That's a senior citizen. I don't care what you say. That man's like 65 years old. Probably joined because he's broke. He doesn't get any retirement check. He has no pension. But if this is who they're hiring now, then I think we're going to be okay. You can't convince me that man can run 1.5 miles straight without having to stop, do 25 sit-ups in under a minute and 22 push-ups in under a minute, because that's the requirement, the physical requirement to join pretty much almost every law enforcement organization in America. It's not much. But you can't convince me this guy right here can do any of that. It's just not happening. Also, really quick, in case you didn't know, the ERO that's on his vest, that's part of ICE. It stands for Enforcement of Removal Operations. Apparently, they're the old guys that go around sweeping people up now.
Charlie Kirk's form of Christianity is a form of white supremacy by which I have a theory that in America, there are 2 types of main Christianity. One worships Jesus, the other worships white supremacy. And the reason why I can back this up is because I did my undergraduate thesis on the color of Jesus back when I was in the Bible Belt of northern Florida, which I had no idea what kind of racial dynamics and politics I was getting into at the time. But this will absolutely be a lecture. So if you want to buckle in and sit down for this, this is actually kind of interesting. My first point, though, I do want to make is that the KKK, and I'm talking about the revival of the KKK, like post D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, created this revival of the KKK. And why I bring this up that is so important and necessary is because the KKK identified as Christians. And not just Christians, but they had 3 basic enemies, or like in their basic like manifesto. Number 1, obviously, not surprisingly, Black people. Number 2, Jewish people. The third, though, were Catholics. And the reason for Catholics, when I was diving further into like the reasoning about why it was Catholics, was because they identified Catholics as like too European, like they were too affiliated with like Europeanness. And in this branch of white supremacy that the KKK has kind of manifested, which is a predominant ideology that obviously is found in the United States, is that being too European is not white enough, because whiteness is a separation, right? We even understand that in the history of like supremacist, fascist ideologies, right? When they were stripping buildings of like ornate color and creating these like, communist fascist buildings of the simplicity, they were essentially trying to separate Europe and create this kind of conformity. So this stripping down is this form of supremacy culture that we know that has happened in Europe, that we can also see in the United States. But taking a step further, when we talk about the color of Christ, okay? When I was reading, there was number one, the book was called Color of Christ. The second book I read was American Jesus. Both of these books were really supplemental to my research. And one of the really important things they were saying was that the American immigrants, the immigrants coming into America, who were becoming the first Americans, were in fact Protestants, and not just Protestants, but the specific brand of iconoclasts. Iconoclasts were essentially this wave of Protestantism that kind of came after like the Catholics, where they kind of started to see images of Jesus and other religious figures as idolatry. And so what they started doing was they started dismantling and destroying them. If you actually see, like, there's a lot of history, I think, in Germany, where you actually can see this form of iconoclasm where like these busts were destroyed, right? We know that it was what was his name? Saint John of Damascus, I believe, who argued that the images of Jesus were not in fact idol worship, because they were representations of what we were worshiping. We weren't worshiping the idols themselves. I believe it was John of Damascus. I have to double check on that. But when we look at these other forms of images of Jesus, right, there were essentially no images of Jesus under these Protestant circles that were manifesting in America. And I know people can say, well, what about the Catholics that were like on Spanish territory? Well, Spanish territory was not America yet. And that is also really important to me. But then, so Joseph Smith in the mid 1800s, right? This is the first idea of perhaps like images of Jesus that we might actually come to know, by which he claimed to have seen a white pillar of light. And a few years later, changed the statement to say, actually, I saw Jesus, he was blonde hair and blue eyed. And this did in fact result in Mormon Christian groups creating images of Jesus that were in fact blonde hair, blue eyed. And there was in fact an attempt in the United States to separate and segregate Jesus from his Middle Eastern or even European heritage. And it was very interesting because these images became extremely political. Indigenous people and Black enslaved people were absolutely shocked when they were like, wait, this is the Jesus we were worshiping the whole time, ? But we also did notice really interesting, like, weird manifestations of this image of like white Jesus, by which in the time of Jewish refugees trying to flee and enter into America, there was actually really big movements of Americans who were trying to be like, well, Jesus wasn't Jewish, he was blonde hair, blue eyed, therefore we don't need to help these Jewish people who are trying to escape the Nazi fascist regimes. So it is really interesting to look at from this particular lens, because when you look at people like Charlie Kirk and the values that they worship and how far they have absolutely separated from the actual teachings of Jesus, right? But still claim to worship Jesus. They don't worship Jesus, they worship America. And America, for them, is a symbol of the whiteness, of the separation of all these other influences to create what they know today. Wow, I did not even realize I didn't even stutter very much on this. But yeah, it's crazy, honestly.
Today, we're learning Donald Trump is canceling cancer funding. Trump is looking to cut the National Cancer Institute's budget by more than a third and sharply lower the percentage of expenses that the government will cover for research labs funded by the government. He's also canceled hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cancer-related research grants and contracts, and suspended or delayed payments for for hundreds of millions more, almost entirely for political reasons. The one big problem with this is that it can't easily be undone by the next president that does care about cancer research. The government's research system is uniquely vulnerable because once ongoing research projects are interrupted, they can be very difficult to restart. One example of Trump canceling cancer research is for pediatric brain cancer. That means for kids. The lab that was making progress on it had their government meeting canceled and not rescheduled for months.
Trying to stay out of trouble, but trouble just find the fuck out of me. Trouble just find the fuck out of me.
Dude, did you know that some people actually have the rare ability, like a literal superpower, to smell rain before it happens? The science behind this whole thing is insane, and it's real. So imagine just for a second that you're walking outside on a normal day, and then your nose tells you that a storm is coming hours before the first drop even falls. That smell actually has a name, and it's called petrichor. It's an earthy sort of type scent that rises from the ground before it rains. They're saying that this happens because a chemical is released by hidden bacteria that's in the soil, and the moment humidity climbs, the ground literally breathes it into the air. What's insane about this whole thing is that humans can actually detect this chemical, which is called geosmin, in parts per billion. That is so incredibly sensitive, it's like smelling a single drop of liquid in an Olympic pool. That's not even it, by the way. Sometimes before a storm, lightning can split oxygen into the atmosphere, creating something that's called ozone. Winds in the atmosphere can actually bring that down to ground level, and a few people can actually sense it long before the storm even comes. If I'm being honest, I think I have smelled rain before, but I've never smelt it before it comes. Are you one of these rare people that can smell the rain, and can you smell it before or after it happens?
Did you see these videos where ICE raided a car wash in Long Beach, California, where people can be heard saying they have their papers? Watch.
Hey. ICE is open.
No digan nada. Oh shit, man. Yeah, you need to get.
Are you fucking proud of yourself? I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be here. I'm so sorry.
Take the mask off, Buster.
Show us your face. I'm sorry, Tom. I should have been here. Fucking piece of shit. Don't make all the fucking things at night.
That was tragic to see, going after fathers, mothers, family members who are trying to work and provide for their families. This happened at the Bixby Knolls car wash on Warlow Street, where agents quickly descended on the car wash without a warrant and seemed to just chase down anyone who looked Latino. According to reports, they picked up 7 people, 1 person from Honduras, 3 from El Salvador, and 3 from Mexico. And at least 4 of them did have papers. The mayor of Long Beach did confirm the raid and said they're helping the employees of the car wash with the resources that they need. Unfortunately, these were not the only people who were also kidnapped by ICE that day. There were also reports that 30 minutes before the car wash, the same ICE agents descended on a Home Depot in Garden Grove, and that after the car wash, they moved on to Lenox. That makes 9 people kidnapped by masked men in a day. I hope the people who were detained can get out quickly and get back to their families, and I hope the woman who seemed to have a medical episode is okay. These agents have been constantly terrorizing our communities, but now they have the legal backing of the Supreme Court to go after us because of the color of our skin.
The only thing is that I'm already here. I'm literally here. They dismissed. I'm here. I got ready. I got dressed. And you dismissed my case right before I'm even supposed to go in. So what was this for? Was this to waste my time? So was this just to waste my time? Was this just to bother me? I got ready. I even tried to be respectful and cover my tattoos and everything. At this point, face me. I'm in trouble for supposedly exposing ICE raid locations in different places in Georgia. I supposedly, but there's no evidence, which is why my lawyer was confident that this was a waste of tax dollars. And now I understand. You have got to be kidding me. And then they left the door open, so the courthouse, I go into the courthouse and I go through basically courthouse TSA. I sit down and I'm all ready and my hair was up. I looked cute. Leave the door open to the courthouse because I don't know why, mosquitoes got in. I got bit on my face. I got bit. You can't see because of but I got bit. I have one right here. Right here. And then I have one right here on my forehead. I'm leaving. Actually, no. Let me go. All these Congress members, all of these politicians who are pushing to overturn gay marriage, who are attacking gay rights, who are working tooth and nail to ban trans rights, to go after trans rights, are the main ones that are on Grindr. And you know what I don't understand? And you know what else? I don't understand? Why would you go after trans rights, trans people in general, when that is exactly what you have as preferred in your bio on Grindr? Prefers female to male, prefers male to female on Grindr. You're trying to go after the same thing that you prefer behind closed doors. But don't take my word for it. I only almost got in trouble for exposing ICE raid locations to the T repeatedly, accurately, suspiciously, coincidentally. This government, this state. It's my time. I got dressed for this. I got ready. I got bit by mosquitoes. I'm about to set it off in here. Gang. Set it off. I showed up here. I wore a long sleeve for this. And for what? And for you to literally waste my time on purpose? I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. Call an ambulance, but not for me.
The National Native American Boarding School Healing Commission is now interviewing Native Hawaiians in Portland to get their first-hand encounters, perspective, and experiences when it comes to the horrors that Indigenous people faced in boarding schools. With different phrases and terms being used for the Kanaka Maoli, such as attendees instead of students and seminaries instead of boarding schools, the horrors were still the same. There were nearly 7 reformatories on the islands, and this oral project aims to give survivors a way to have their voices heard. For over 110 years, the United States has put Indigenous children and families into state and church-run boarding schools in efforts to assimilate them. By 1926, there were over 526 government-funded boarding schools that were in use. Today, over 55 of those boarding schools still exist in one form or another.
So people might try to tell you, oh, that happened so long ago, whatever, but there is no expiration date on your pain. There is no expiration date on your healing. So I just want you to keep that in mind, whatever that you're going through. There's no timeline. There's no boxes to check or of when you should be okay or when you should be at this point. So yeah, there's no expiration date. Just keep that in mind.
But then we saw last Saturday. No, yeah, I did see that one in the sunset.
The Navy ships are joining us. It's important seeing it as a threat for Israel.
If you're a member of one of the groups that Donald Trump is trying to hurt, if you're trans, LGBTQ, POC, disabled, I need you to listen to this, and then I want you to share it with others in your community. And if you can, I need you to comment, repost, share, like, do everything you can to boost it. This is really important. Something pretty cool happened in the Netherlands on Tuesday. To explain it, I need to give you a little bit of context, so bear with me. As you may be aware, right now it's quite difficult for people from the US to claim asylum elsewhere. The USA is on most countries' safe country list, meaning that they will give you a limited asylum procedure and they're not likely to have a good look at any evidence you provide. Jay has been working with an LGBTQ organisation in the Netherlands, and on Tuesday he presented a report on why the US is no longer a safe country to the Dutch Parliament. They're pushing for a re-evaluation of the USA on the safe country list, and at a minimum they're pushing for exceptions to be applied to specific groups. Jay told me that although there's kind of right-wing grumbling in the Netherlands, it's under the same pressures that we're seeing pretty much everywhere with regards to anti-immigrant, anti-trans, etc. The left and the centrist parties are really aware of what's happening and they seem to want to be proactive. It sounds like a decision will be made at the end of October, which I appreciate with the way things are moving seems very far away. But the milestone of the Netherlands openly acknowledging the risk that there is to certain groups in the USA cannot be underestimated, and it will send a huge message to the international community. Help Me Leave wants this to be happening everywhere. There will be a lot less pressure on a handful of countries if lots of countries acknowledge the risk that certain groups are under in the US right now. If you're interested in that project, you live in a country that isn't the USA and you want to put your political representatives under pressure to recognise what is happening, give me a follow and I'll follow up with more on it in the coming days. It's a long road, but this is a really positive step on it, and it's making me feel quite hopeful this morning.
You're telling me that if you're neurodivergent and your mom was your first bully and then you went on to have friends that became your second bullies and then you became the villain in the end is like some kind of Tenet event? That's crazy because I've been on TikTok for only like 2 months. Keep showing me all this like neurodivergent content and it's like making me feel like I'm not crazy. All of these like relatable stories about other girls that have gone through pretty much the exact same thing. There's a quote I saw the other day and it was like, the most dangerous anger is created inside of somebody that has a good heart, and I just like resonated with that so much. I've been hearing a lot of stories about like toxic friendships and relationships and kind of like touching on some of mine, but somebody said when you're watching these videos, when the person's telling the story, you kind of gotta wonder like where the person telling the story plays a role in the scenario, you know? And I agree with that. I feel like everybody should be taking accountability in the situation in some form. And so that's what I had to do. But I didn't realize until I was like a full-blown adult, this psychological phenomenon where you go out and mimic relationships that you have with your parents, like with your friends and your relationship. So in my case, my mom was my first bully. And as a young kid, that programs your mind into thinking like other girls or other like female figures are bullies. It makes you feel like they're not safe. So as a kid and a teenager and even a young adult, I went on to make friends with girls that mistreated me a lot in the same ways that my mom did. I genuinely thought that that was normal. Like, this is just how it is. Like, girls are just catty and they turn on each other and they talk about each other behind each other's backs, and I guess that's just how it is. They prioritize men. They don't care about each other's feelings. They lie to each other. Like, these are all the things that my mom taught me. So I went on to make friendships just like how it was with my mom. Even though I thought that was normal, my body did not. Over time, I could feel like the pent up disrespect and the lack of care, the lack of empathy, and just like all of this anger was building up inside of me, and I could sense it. I was just like, this is just like my mom, but I never really put it together in my head. Oh, I'm not gonna say like specifically what happened. I mean, maybe down the line as I get more comfortable with telling my stories. When I look at it from a psychological standpoint, it's not an excuse. I could see why, especially with neurodivergent girls, like this rage that overcomes them, basically like seek revenge in a way. But I'm here to tell you that revenge doesn't do anything. Actually, it ruins your life. What you need to do, and what nobody ever told me, so I'm telling you right now, learn how to regulate your emotions. That's on you. But also choose your friends wisely. Like, friends shouldn't be dismissing you or ignoring you or making you feel like it's unsafe to talk to them. That's how it was. Over time, all of this stuff like built up. I exploded. Like, it's an autistic thing. Autistic rage. It's not an excuse, but I'm learning. And the first thing is just like knowing yourself and knowing your needs and knowing your standards, not settling. Second thing is just knowing when to walk away. I think that I just like swept a lot of things under the rug, and that led to a lot of things building up inside. And the third thing is just love yourself. Trying to fill a void with other people is never gonna work out. Not that I was like on purpose trying to fill the void by like having friends. I knew there was something missing in my life, and I'm pretty sure it was just like genuine feminine energy, caring and kind and soft and safe. That's what I was missing. I was just searching for it in all the wrong people. I had to pay the consequences for my actions, for not knowing how to regulate my emotions. So that's why I'm coming on TikTok right now to tell my stories and to hopefully help you so that you don't make my mistakes. Going back to my mom, like, I do want to say that she had villainized me as a child. I don't think a lot of parents understand, like, their words hold a lot of power over their kids. They actually do internalize and believe the things that they say to their kids. It's like affirmations. So if my mom was saying things like, oh, you're such a great kid, and maybe things would have been different. She was saying that I was this, that, disrespectful. And it's like, I feel like all my life, I almost like played into that role because she had put me in that box. And the reason why I was even acting up like that was because she wasn't taking care of me in the way that I deserved. That is how a lot of people become the villain, because of the mistreatment of other people around them. I'm low-key trying not to cry. But taking accountability sucks. It's really hard. But that's the first step. Like, you literally have to look in the mirror and see where you play a role and understand what you need to do to move forward. That's all I got. No, it's like a virtual thing. I still feel like I have like a space where I can like talk about what's going on. I really appreciate TikTok. And if you have gone through something similar, then tell your stories, because this is a safe space, honestly. Like, I'm not gonna judge. I won't judge you unlike your mean friends or your mean mom.
The FBI is classifying trans people as terrorists? It might actually be worse than that. What's worse than classifying a whole group of innocent people as terrorists? Do you ever use words like cisgender or dead name? Sure, I've said those things. You might want to pay attention then. Some media outlets like Them or The Independent have started picking up on this story that stemmed from an independent journalist who says that he's heard from 2 separate law enforcement officers now that the FBI is considering labeling trans people as NVEs? It's worth mentioning that it sounds like this is largely due to a petition from the Oversight Project, which spun off from the Heritage Foundation earlier this year. Of course it does. Everything tracks back to the Heritage Foundation. What is an NVME anyways? NVE, Nihilistic Violent Extremist, is a new analytical category that the FBI started using earlier this year, which refers to people that are driven by hatred, anger, or fear instead of a formal political or religious belief system. They're alienated from society, and they may engage in violence with the intent of causing chaos or destroying the social order. So they're saying that everyone who's trans is violent and wants to destroy society? No, that's what some of the discussion online is making it sound like, but Oversight and Heritage have been extremely clear that they don't think all trans people are violent. This is more about transgender ideology. Which isn't a real thing, like the gay agenda, it's just political rhetoric. Right, which is used to reframe a medical conversation as just a difference in beliefs. That delegitimizes transgenderism as you just being crazy. I mean, that is awful, but how is that worse than labeling all trans people as NVEs? Because Oversight and Heritage are pushing the FBI to try to classify someone saying something like anti-trans rhetoric or policies are a form of violence against trans people, or that those things threaten the lives of trans people by contributing to suicide rates, or saying things like Oversight or Heritage want to eradicate trans people. Those things should be considered extreme ideology. Wait, what? Some of those are like mainstream progressive talking points. Exactly. They even made a list of words that they consider extremist, including things like cisgender, dead naming, or misgendering. Just using any of those words could get you classified as an extremist now? I think it might be more about using vague language to scare people into not speaking up, which then causes more division on the left. It's also something that can be used against your political enemies. To do what? What happens if they say that you're an extremist? We don't really know for sure, but based on how these have been used in the past, increased surveillance for one. Great, more spying on my phone. Or if someone were charged with a violent crime, they might add on domestic terrorism charges. Or if you were convicted of a crime, a judge might see extremist affiliation as aggravating, and they might give you a harsher sentence. So we're on a new list, right? Just don't say cisgender or dead name or actually, just don't talk.
And then they came for you. And that's what's going to happen if this administration suspends the writ of habeas corpus. They're going to start arresting anyone and everyone they deem an enemy or a criminal. The writ of habeas corpus protects anyone on American soil and ensures they have a fair legal proceeding. You can't just take somebody off the street, say they've committed a crime, and throw them in jail without a trial, without a lawyer. All of that, everything that is fundamental to the United States justice system, as flawed as it is, will be thrown out the door. Stephen Miller is talking about how they're considering how it's valid to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. And if that happens, people like Aaron Parnas, people who are journalists in legacy media, independent journalists, anyone in my comment section, me, anyone who goes on social media and speaks against this administration could be subject to arrest and detention, God knows where. And this is the last line. This is the final line. I mean, if you're not waking up yet, if this happens, it has not happened yet. If this happens, will you believe us
I love having a whimsical and bubbly personality because it always exposes people's character.
So true, but also with people like that, their hubris is often going to be their downfall. Because often what they do is they underestimate people that they deem weaker. And often they conflate being bubbly and kind as being weak and unintelligent. And they take advantage, or they assume that if you are kind, that you have like this moral compass and you won't fight back. So that, you know, they could just get away with things because you won't fight back. Maybe on my TikTok, I'm more like serious. In real life, I'm actually like a pretty bubbly person. And that always comes with a certain type of person underestimating you or minimizing you. When I say certain type, I think it's more like a narcissistic type of personality. And I use the word narcissistic because in the way that some people will project onto you, but more importantly, think that they are better than you and try to minimize others. But it's also coupled with a type of arrogance, and that's actually how you can use what they do to your advantage. Because if you have arrogance, you look down on others because you think that you're better than them. Oh, they haven't actually gone through anything. That's why they're so bubbly. That's why they look so naive. You now take advantage of them. Truly, like predatory behavior, honestly. They're usually victims of their own hubris. Because when you are arrogant, you underestimate people you probably shouldn't. Because they conflate kindness with weakness, they don't expect somebody to fight back in ways that are intelligent, calculated, and legal. Because I'm not going to be messy and slash someone's tires. I will, however, sue you. And especially with women, we've conflated being intelligent and calculative with evil. Just like look at every Disney villain ever. And I think that's the trap. That's the trap. Like bad people that are manipulative and etc. think that you won't also be intelligent, calculative, and do things legally to fight against them, or you have like the strength and wherewithal to win. A lot of people are acting maliciously towards people that they deem kind and generous because they think we're stupid. Truly, like that's what they think. They conflate it with weakness and a lack of intelligence.